when the sky was still a mystery.
Are you sure you know what you're doing? I'm working on it.
And flying was still like magic.
Hi there, Terence McGuana here, and today I want to talk to you about one of my favourite movies of all time, Sky Bandits from 1986, or as it's known here in the UK as Gunbus. And you might be wondering, Gunbus? What's a gunbus?
This is a gunbus. One hell of a plane.
Luke and Barney are two inept Wild West bank robbers who are forced to enlist in the frontline battlefields of World War I and manage to become heroes of the sky by joining an eccentric squadron of the Royal Flying Corps on a mission to take down an enemy warship hidden in the clouds. When this film was first released in 1986 in the United States, it absolutely bombed at the American box office and only got released in the UK on videotape in 1987, which was when I first encountered this movie, and I was blown away. I thought this movie was very entertaining. Now looking back at it as a grown-up, I can see that it does have serious script problems, but I still get a thrill from watching this. Out of most films that I rewatch from the 1980s that I grew up with, this movie for some reason has that nostalgia factor for me, and I don't know why. I think it's because I used to read these sort of war comics at the time, the Commando comics, Victor, Eagle, Hotspur, and they were always filled with these sort of strange wartime stories. Some were realistic and some were just pure fantasy, and that is where Gunbus Sky Bandits falls into. It falls into that sort of steampunk fantasy film. I was completely naive to what had actually happened in World War I. I didn't know anything about war at that age. I was 8 years old when I saw this film, and I knew nothing about wars that had happened in the past. And this convinced me that this certain technology that they have on display in this film was readily available. It wasn't until years later when I actually studied World War I at school that I was like, wait a minute, that movie was complete baloney. I think what makes it so interesting is how it combines the idea of starting off in the Wild West, where you've got these two characters, Luke and Barney, who are a couple of buffoons, really. They spend the majority of the film sort of smacking each other in the head and sort of just constantly ribbing each other in a very childish way. You can see that the writers are trying to go for this Butch and Sundance kind of dynamic, but they don't seem to have that. They don't give the characters that level of intelligence that Butch and Sundance had. The look of the film is brilliant. You can see that they've put so much effort into creating this whole Wild West vibe, and the way it's shot, it's got that sand-coloured sort of cinematography in the opening scenes. And we're in the Wild West for about 10 minutes, and then these characters get captured and then they're sent to France in World War I, and the whole look of the film changes. Again, it goes more into that sort of pasty, sort of grey look, and I just think it's a real visual feast. If you're watching this film expecting historical truth and logic, then forget about it. Right? This movie is bonkers. They shoot down this giant plane bomber with just their pistols. It is ridiculous. And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about this film. It jumps the shark constantly. I like these actors. I've seen them in other things. Jeff Osterhage and Scott McGinnis. They're fine. I don't blame them for the disappointment that this film brings. It's the script. The script doesn't seem to connect. They just seem to go from one bumbling set piece to another without any sort of consequence. Like, these characters completely abandon their battalion in the army and it's just forgotten about. And then they join this squadron of eccentric lunatics. If you just lay back and enjoy the vibe of this movie, that it really does capture that sort of pulp comic strip vibe. And you do get the impression that the filmmakers are more interested in the miniatures and the special effects In fact, the movie was directed by Zoran Perisic, who is the man credited for making Superman fly. He was the innovator of this Zoptic technique that helped create that effect for the flying scenes for the original Superman movie, and this was his debut as a film director. And sadly, he's never actually went on to be a successful film director, even though visually he can tell a good story. If the story was there, if they had a decent script, I could tell that this director could put out a really interesting film, because the cinematography is magnificent. It just looks perfect, but it's let down by this really weak script, and I'm fine with that, right? As much as for me this film is pure nostalgia, but I still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. One of the biggest offences a film can make for me is be boring, and one thing I'll say about Sky Bandits, aka Gunbus, it's not a boring film. It moves at a decent pace, but the thing is, if you allow logic to get in the way and go, well, that just wouldn't happen, that makes no sense, then you're going to derail your enjoyment of the film. But if you just go with it, if you just enjoy these crazy set pieces, these brilliant flying scenes, you're going to have a great time. You're going to have a really great time, and that's what I get from this movie, is that I just go, hey, it's a vibe. This movie's a vibe. Just enjoy it. It's a difficult film to sell to people, because you really have to throw logic out the door. And there are people online that I'm friends with, and they would just despise this film because they would just pick it apart. They would just pick it apart and say, that wouldn't happen, this is nonsense, that just completely took me out of the film. Whereas I can quite easily sit back and go, I don't care, I'm enjoying it. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. I'm Terence McGuana, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!
Sky Bandits.
Well, you call that a landing? We walked away from it, didn't we?
Rated PG. Starts Friday.